What makes people want to do their best? Can you force somebody to do their best? Lean, Agile, Scrum, SAFe, Canva, everything that we talk about. The ultimate goal of all of these things is to build a high-performing team, a high-performing portfolio, and a high-performing organization. Would you agree? But let's look at some of the other key components of an agile mindset. One is continuous customer feedback is more important than everything else. We got to find ways to build feedback into our process. And what we need to build feedback is something working, right? We can get feedback on a plan as well, but that's not real feedback. Would you agree? We got to show them something that is working, and that is something that is going to give us real customer feedback. So we've got to find ways to incorporate that feedback into our processes. Small cross-functional teams are more important than big departments. People structured in silos. We have a project management office, then we got a department of developers and a silo of QAs, and then we got security, and then we got UI UX. Anybody seen all of those different departments in an organization? Mm-hmm. What are the challenges with those departments when we set up our people in those silos? Hard to collaborate. Do you agree?
It creates a lot of dependencies.
Dependencies.
Because if it's a priority for one team, it may not be the same priority for the other team. I've seen that happen.
Yeah. Waiting is common, right? Big bottlenecks build up. Delays happen. You have to file requests for those different departments, and often those requests take a long time, and sometimes back and forth movement becomes highly inefficient. Everybody notice those things in those different silos? So what do we need to do? We need to start organizing our people in value streams. What is a value stream? Value stream or small cross-functional teams is a group of people that have all the skills and the tools required to deliver something of value to a customer. In our case, our value stream is typically delivering some kind of a system, product, or solution that is going to be used by an internal or external customer. So what is a cross-functional team? Here's a question. You think a team of testers is a cross-functional team?
No.
Team of testers? No, right? Because they represent only one function. Is a team of developers a cross-functional team?
No.
No.
Only one function. So what is a cross-functional team? A team that has maybe a product owner who represents the customer. Scrum Master, who helps facilitate events, help them manage dependencies, improve practices. Maybe a few developers who build the system. Maybe a couple testers who test the system. Maybe a UI UX specialist if required. Maybe a tech lead who helps make design decisions, is an expert on architecture of the system. All of those roles combined is what a cross-functional team is. You with me? Thumbs up, check-in, making sense on small cross-functional teams. So organizing people in those cross-silo teams, people that are required to work together should be structured as one team in there, as opposed to having people structured in big departments. Let's look at teams over individuals. That's the next one that kind of goes hand in hand with the one above it, which means we think about people as teams. What is the smallest? We often say that in Scaled Agile and SAFe. The smallest building block of a SAFe portfolio, should be a team. Now, what does that mean? That once we have created a team, we do our best to not break that team. Which means if we have to move a group of people from one project to another project, we don't move people, we move the team. So team stays together for an extended period of time. Because research on our technology teams is suggesting that it takes our teams 6 to 9 months to become a high-performing team. And often we don't even let our people stay together for those 6 to 9 months. So therefore, we never get to leverage the true power of teamwork that can come once those people start to build those connections, rapport, understand each other's perspectives and mindsets. Collaboration across the value stream is more important than siloism, which means we got to think in terms of what is our goal collectively as a value stream. So again, what is a value stream? A group of people that can deliver something of value to a customer independently. For example, testers alone cannot deliver something to the customer. You with me? Right? Testers cannot deliver something. Developers alone cannot deliver something. Project managers alone cannot deliver something. Security architects alone cannot deliver something. They need to work as a what we call value stream of people that work together as one team to deliver something to our customers. Trust-based partnerships over shallow groupism. This is big, and it takes time to build these trust-based partnerships, because trust-based partnerships, as we put in the chat as well, comes from transparency, comes from alignment, comes from doing the right thing consistently, comes from involving people at the right time, comes from enabling those collaborative decision-making in our teams. Would you agree? Right? When we involve people at the right time for the right thing, that is when trust slowly starts to build. And trust is an interesting thing, because you can't ask somebody to trust you and they start trusting you, right? Trust is a feeling that's going to evolve over time. And the hard part about that is it takes time to build trust, but it takes one day to break it. Isn't it?
Or a minute.
What's that, Bhagya?
I said, or a minute or two.
Exactly, right? It can break instantly when we do the wrong thing. Now, this specifically has implications on our leadership individuals, right? How we incorporate changes, how we implement improvements, how we make decisions in a portfolio. Are we involving people in our decision-making processes? Because one of those things that our leadership team members, that I always encourage them to remember, and this is a common mistake we make, I make that mistake too, is that we lose sight of the bigger picture. So what's the bigger picture? Bigger picture, in my opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, bigger picture, in my opinion, is that the ultimate goal of everything that we're talking about, Lean, Agile, Scrum, SAFe, Kanban, everything that we talk about, the ultimate goal of all of these things is to build a high-performing team, a high-performing portfolio, and a high-performing organization. Would you agree? That is the ultimate goal of everything that we're talking about. And here is what we often miss out on. We miss out on the fact that a high-performing team is made up of high-performing people. And high-performing people are people who show up at work willing to do their best, and not just enough to collect the paycheck. Have you seen a work environment where people are doing just enough to collect the paycheck? Anybody seen that? Can that be a high-performing team? Tough, right, Stephanie? Pretty hard for that to be a high-performing team. And that is why we should not overlook the importance of how we make people feel in the process of implementing these improvements and implementing these changes. Because how we make them feel is going to decide how they show up. And how they show up is going to define whether or not you eventually hit the goal of everything that we're trying to do. Right? So building trust-based partnerships, involving people, doing the right thing, building transparency, enabling collaboration, self-organizing teams is what is going to eventually enable that ultimate goal of being a high-performing portfolio. Sounds good? Too intense? Okay. Networks over hierarchies, which means we've got to enable people to work as a network of people. For example, question for Denise. Denise, quick question for you. Denise, we're looking at, let's say, a startup down the street. That startup has only 5 or 6 employees. Would you see a lot of silos, a lot of politics, a lot of paperwork, a lot of those things in that startup?
No.
No, right? That startup would operate what we call as a network of people. Those people would collaborate seamlessly without any barriers, and they would just have one thing in mind: customer centricity. They just want to deliver value to a customer as fast, as seamlessly as possible, right? But as that startup starts to grow, one of the biggest challenges that our portfolios face is how can we retain that what we call network mindset and that network effect that comes from a small company. And one of the key challenges and one of the key goals for many of our agile leaders is to retain that network effect, which means building that startup mindset in a large company. Because if you think about it, a team, a group of people, let's say 50 people, that are delivering and maintaining a web application, right? So they're responsible for a web app that they build and maintain for a set of customers. Can those 50 people not work as a startup? Technically, they could, right? They could have collaborative network effect in there. And that is what we want to enable when we're building those small cross-functional teams, where we kind of break down those silos and we enable people to collaborate seamlessly with people that they need to collaborate with. With me, all set? Good so far? And verb?
Yes.
All set? Okay, good. Let's get into the next one, empowerment over control. Empowering people to make decisions rather than trying to retain control by holding decisions. Have you seen leaders that want to make every decision that they possibly can? They want you to come over to them to ask them every question that they possibly can to retain that control of the conversation. As they say, you know, there's a video that I watched the other day on YouTube by David Marquis. He said, some people think leadership is about building followers, while actually leadership is about building leaders. Isn't it? Leadership is more about building and enabling leaders as opposed to building followers. And that's where empowerment comes in, which means letting people make the decision that applies to them. Letting people self-organize. One of my clients where we implemented scaled agile, one of those things that we did, amongst many other things, was nobody's approving anybody's vacation. Who's approving their vacation? They are self-approving their vacation. Right? In collaboration with the team that they work with, right? Everybody knows the vacation days that they have. They decide when they're going to go and take that vacation in alignment with the team, right? If I have to take a vacation, I go and talk to the team. Team, I want to take a week off. What do you think? Who can take my work over? And now what happens? Think about that once. When you approve your own vacation, what happens? What happens to your ownership level of your work? What happens to your feeling, right, Stephanie? Goes up. What happens to your feeling about the work that you do, right? There have been a lot of researches on the topic. What makes people want to do their best? Can you force somebody to do their best? Tough, right? We can only get them to do just enough to collect the paycheck. That's something that we can force somebody to do because they might have the fear of being let go, but to get them to do their best, they really got to want to do their best, right? And there have been a lot of researches on that topic. One of the most respected researches is published in the book called Drive. And that book called Drive identified 3 things that make people want to do their best. And that is one of the most respected researches when it comes to human performance. And that research found 3 things that make people want to do their best, which have huge implications on an agile environment. What are those 3 things? Number 1, autonomy, which means giving them the opportunity to plan their work on their own, make decisions for themselves. Number 2, mastery, which means giving people the opportunity to get better at stuff. And finally, number 3 is purpose, which means connecting our work to something that has meaning beyond us, thinking about the impact that our work makes on the community, on the society in general. So empowering people, letting them make decisions, giving them the autonomy, as opposed to controlling every decision, controlling the process, and constraining people is what that agile mindset is about. Good. Okay, testing and experimenting is more important than planning. Now, that doesn't mean that planning is a complete waste of time. Planning is important as well, but testing and experimenting, which means we've got to start getting something moving and start getting some feedback. So which means we got to start thinking about how can we test our assumptions? How can we experiment our way to the best solution possible, right? And that is what testing and experimenting over planning. Because how long does it take for a plan to become outdated after we stop planning? How long? Not very long, right? So things can start changing pretty quickly. And we often end up wasting a lot of effort in that planning process. Focus over distraction, which means, and we already highlighted that, working on a few things at a time. When Agile was formally born and Scrum practices became popular, the idea was to have 1:1 ratio for product is to a team, which means that this team works on one product or one system for an extended period of time, rather than every developer being spread on 7 teams. Have you seen that? One developer on 7 project teams, right? Now, how do you become proficient? How do you focus on something? How do you improve yourself if you're working on so many different things at the same time? So working on fewer things is important, and having our teams being long-lived. For example, one of the teams that I helped set up in Toronto for a bank about 8 years ago for a system is still working on the same system. 8 years, same team, same system. You with me? Right? So the product owner of that team keeps updating the backlog, new enhancements, bug fixes, configurations to that system keep coming into the backlog, and the same team, the same system for the last 8 years. And that is one extreme example of focus, right? But we can all try to minimize how thin we want to be spread. So letting our people focus on fewer things for an extended period of time. Transparency over privacy. If you're having way too many closed door meetings, if there is things that we're often having to hide from our team members and people in our portfolio, then you're not doing it right. Would you agree? If in a portfolio you have to hide things, I can't tell this to Anne, oh, this is our strategy, but we're not going to share it right now, then that is a symptom of doing it wrong. If we're having to hide things with people that we spend most of our time with at work, then there's a problem, right? And these are the key elements of the Agile mindset. So here's some of the courses that we would invite you to look into if you want to go deeper into these practices, depending on the role that you play. So SAFe Agilist is a 2-day course. Most of these are 2 days, except for the Lean Agile Architecture one, which is 3 days. Every other course is a 2-day course. SAFe Agilist is often a course that people take to build a first step, to take their first step into Lean Agile software development, to understand how these things operate at scale. And then afterwards, people would often go into specific role-based courses based on the role that they are going to play in an organization.